People are coming to churches now. Many of them because they're desperate and they have no other choice. They've looked for other ways to find help. They're in crisis, but also they're coming to connect. And I do think that there's a sense of truth that they're looking for. So how do we remove obstacles and barriers, not make it easier for them to follow Jesus, not paint a picture that, hey, just this soft gospel that's just pray this prayer and then you're fine. You have eternal life,
Right.
forgiveness of sins, and no, not that. Lordship as well. But I believe that removing obstacles that I think that that a lot of churches have put in the way too soon for people, that they just say, I give up. It's like going to one of those gyms, CrossFit or whatever, that wants you to do this extensive, intense workout on day one.
Right.
Welcome back to the Evangelical Anglican. I'm Jared Jones, your host. I'm really excited today to have Chris Patton. He is the pastor at Southside Church in South Atlanta. It is affiliated with North Point Community Church, which is Andy Stanley's church. So we are talking today to a bona fide, in the flesh, non-denom megachurch pastor, which I know for many people in the internet today is the greatest enemy of all time. But I think what you're going to find is, while you might not agree with him on how you would want to construct your church, or even the church you would want to construct, what he's trying to do is a good and gospel-centered thing. And so I think this gives a really good insight into just a minority report. I mean, I think in general, everyone loves to knock on the non-denoms, and some of it's justified. I'm not in a non-denom. I'm in an Episcopal church. At the heart, and this show, we've always been a little more trying to defend the non-denoms from some of the attacks that they get. Not that they need us to defend them, but at the heart, what these church leaders are doing is trying to build churches that have low barriers of entry, so that lost and de-churched and hurting people can feel safe to come and join a church where they would not have felt safe to join a different church. And I think it's a noble calling. I think it's a noble vision, and I think it's something that we should learn from. And I really think that the model that he presents is actually really close to what Anglicanism was always meant to be, which is a community-driven local church that is broadly and comprehensively Protestant Christian, i.e. evangelical in its nature, but it doesn't get into the weeds on all the different theological positions. A church that people of all kinds of denominations, traditions, positions can actually come and be a part of. It's a simply Christian church. And I think Anglicanism, if done rightly, is that and needs to be that. And therefore, we need to look at, how do we lower the barriers of entry into an Episcopal church? How do we make sure that we communicate that outsiders are welcomed? I mean, we have the signs. The Episcopal Church welcomes you. Then why aren't we growing as much as we might think? Why are more people going to the non-denoms if we've posted signs saying that we welcome them? Maybe we aren't as welcoming as we think that we are all the time. Maybe the other churches have something that they're offering to people that people really feel like they need right now, which is safety and a place to belong, a place where they don't have to have all their identifiers and identities and what is the Episcopal identity? And like, are you Episcopalian or are you too Baptist? So don't come here if you're too Baptist. This isn't the place for you. I mean, that's and every denomination can have that. Instead, they're creating churches where Christians are welcome. And what is happening is that when they've lowered those barriers of entry, and they've tried to at one point, Chris will say that everything speaks in your church. Everything speaks. Everything communicates welcome. Everything communicates excited that people are there. when you view it church like that, and when you begin to do that, when you begin to lower the barrier of entry, I would say when you begin to treat prayer like it's common prayer that everyone can be a part of, that everyone can jump in on, not a special liturgy out there. It's in your hand, prayer book, whatever. When you do that, what begins to happen is that people begin to flock to your church, uh, particularly broken people, lost people, people looking for truth, people without all the answers. And therefore they don't want to go to somewhere. They might be nervous about going to somewhere that's too dogmatic. And by the dogmatic, I don't mean like, oh, it believes something. I just mean like, oh, well, if you're going to join our church, you have to subscribe to this, and this. Well, that's a perfectly fine way to run a church. I'm not critiquing that. But I am saying that there is another way, and there's another avenue open to churches to create something where people of all stripes can really be part of. And the churches that are doing that really well right now, whether you like it or not, are the non-denoms, and they're growing. So as much as we want to complain and gripe, scoreboard, I mean, just and get what we got to get with the program. And I'm not saying that we need to become non-denominational churches. I'll follow up more on this in the post-op at the end of this week. So subscribe to the channel so you can watch the post-op, or maybe I'm going to offer some more thoughts on how Episcopal or Anglican churches in particular can do this better. So I'm not saying that we need to all become non-denominational, but what I am saying is I think the identity of Anglicanism is actually a lower barrier of entry church that all Christians can be a part of, particularly designed to bring comfort and ease the suffering of sufferers and sinners. And so the non-denoms are doing that really well right now. So I hope you're excited. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with me and Chris. Sorry for the long intro. Today on the show by Chris Patton. Chris is the pastor of Southside Church in Atlanta, Georgia, or outside of Atlanta. See, the thing about Georgia is like everything is basically Atlanta until you get to Savannah.
That's fair. Yeah.
In college, I went to college in Virginia, and a friend of mine from high school went to the same school. And I remember we were at a party one time, and he lived in Loganville, which probably was an hour and a half drive to get to if you wanted to go to Turner Field and watch the Braves. I mean, you're looking at probably an hour to an hour and a half drive.
Yeah. Yep.
And somebody asked him, like, I was at a party with him, and somebody asked him, "Hey, where are you from?" And he said Atlanta. And I thought, what an interesting state Georgia is. But
It is. Yeah. No, Loganville is actually closer to Athens, where our beloved UGA Bulldogs are. But yeah, that's the only other place people. But I mean, Columbus, Macon, there's some other places as well. But Atlanta definitely is our place. But yeah, we're about 20 minutes south of the airport. And just a little bit of our story. Real quick on me. I mean, I grew up in small Baptist churches. My dad worked at Delta in the tech ops, but also has always been a Southern Baptist music minister. My mom's always accompanied him. My dad at 85 is still leading worship
praise
at
God.
Northside Baptist in Noonan, Georgia. My mom finally had to retire after 63 years of playing due to arthritis. So I'll never be able to retire because he's going to just keep on going. I'm like, Dad, you're really making this difficult for me, which, it's going to be difficult to retire anyway for other reasons. But all that to say that, yeah, I grew up in the church and then in Baptist churches, and we would go to these small Baptist churches. They would start a choir. And when I say small, I mean, it was like tiny, but, 150 to 200, which, is great. And then would be involved in the different things, learned the scripture. I actually just did a funeral at one of the churches we spent 6 years in. And it was really amazing to be back at that church and just get to share with them and reconnect with people who taught me the Bible, because we did Bible drills. If any of you out there know what Bible drills are, and speakers, contests, all that kind of stuff. RAs, GAs, that was all what I grew up in. But I really wore two different masks. I had my mask at church, and then I had my mask that I wore at school with all my school friends. Went down 8 years old, walked the aisle, got baptized, and my parents. They just didn't. We didn't talk about spirituality or Christianity a whole lot because the generation they grew up in just didn't talk about faith. Wasn't I don't know, was it just another thing? So they really, I think, wanted the church to raise me spiritually, which they did a great job of that. But I also had my other life that I was living, which was, to party and just not really follow Jesus and have my friends that I wanted to do other things with. And then went off to college, and it was there that I really feel like I found Christ and relationship with Christ. Ephesians 2:8-9 changed my life in terms of just it wasn't on in terms of what I do or don't do, but it was through what He has done. And came to Christ, and also was discipled through a campus ministry through called Campus Outreach. Was discipled, began leading other folks to Christ, discipling them, and was really just Campus Outreach actually came out of a PCA. Reformed church in Briarwood Presbyterian, which was one of the first PCA churches that broke off from the Presbyterian church with D. James Kennedy and Frank Barker was kind of who spearheaded that. And then, of course, I was part of another church. There was an EPC church, Second Pres in Memphis. And so when I graduated, I went straight into ministry. Looked at some other things, but went straight into ministry. We raised support, which is a whole nother thing.
Right.
They try to, and it really, I mean, and not to speak, it's amazing. I mean, a lot of missionaries do it, but they try to spin it. It's that, it's called people raising, not support raising, but you really are asking for money to fund you. But you know what, Jared, we're doing that now, right? We're
Right.
still
Right.
asking people to give us money to fund what we're doing and also
Right.
for us to paycheck. So,
Right.
um,
That's right. That's right.
but did campus ministry. I went to a conservative seminary. I went to reformed seminary. I felt like I got the best of all the different worlds. The only seminaries I didn't dabble in were the Anglican and Episcopal ones, but I wish I would have, because
Yeah, yeah.
now
It
I
would have
know
ruined quite a few things that you
it.
have.
I could follow in one of my good buddies' footsteps, in your footsteps, and then a non-denominational church. But yeah, went on staff at a church after doing college campus ministry, and that was a non-denominational church, but really more of like a Calvary Chapel expository teaching, but contemporary worship style
Yeah.
church. And learned a ton about how to do ministry, how to be a pastor. And we started a church in Atlanta called Grace Midtown, which has really done extremely well. And then in 2004, I found out that Andrew Cathy, who's the current president of Chick-fil-A, wanted to start a church similar to a church that North Point had started called Buckhead. Actually, North Point didn't start Buckhead Church. North Point took over a church that was called Buckhead Fellowship, that was a contemporary service of a large Baptist church in Atlanta. A lot of people don't know that.
Huh.
And he
Breaking news here
breaking news, exactly,
on
yeah.
the
But
Evangelical Anglican.
yep, that's right. Andrew really wanted to start a church, felt like God had laid it on his heart, but he wasn't going to do that personally. He was going to, go work for the family business, which, good call for him.
That's
So
right.
I had lunch with him, and one thing led to another. And next thing you know, this is throughout 2004. And I'll tell you this is really for us, Whitney and I both, when we were praying about, like, is this a thing that because this is also the time when multi-site and video was just getting going. So it wasn't a thing then. North Point had built this second auditorium next to Siamese auditorium to accommodate more people, and they would just broadcast Andy Stanley messages over to in a live band for worship, and there were other churches that were kind of dabbling in this whole idea of a video communicator. So for me, was news to me. I was like, I love this idea, and here's why is that I really love the idea of pastoring and leading an organization, and really kind of like being, if a CEO is a crude way of saying it, but I don't want to preach every Sunday. So this idea of being able to lead without having to preach every week, I mean, man, that sounded very appealing to me, and get to pastor people, and spend more time doing that, just because I do enjoy communicating, but I don't love it so much that I have to be communicating every week, or even the preparation that goes with
Right.
that.
Right.
So we laid out a fleece. We said, Jenny and I said, okay. And I've got, by the way, my wife, we've been married for 31 years. Jenny, she's wonderful. She's amazing. And then we've got two sons that are about to turn 25 and 28. Quick little things about us and our sons is that our oldest was a walk-on tight end at Georgia. He went viral and he now makes his living on TikTok Live and is also a musical artist. So he's on tour right now,
Nice.
living his best life. Wix Patton. So you can look up Wix Patton, Wix. And,
Well, he's about to get at least 12 to 15 more
yes,
listeners.
yeah. So Christian, but not a Christian artist. So when people say, "So you're doing Christian music?" I'm like, "No, not quite so much." My younger son, really, excited for him. He graduated Georgia, and then he's now following his uncle's footsteps, and he's getting his master's in prosthetics. So he is marketing artificial limbs for folks, and it's just an incredible ministry. But, my wife has been in the talent agency, or talent business her whole career, which, down here in Atlanta, we have the largest film studios in the country now in Trilla Studios. But all that to say, going back to my career in ministry, is that this whole idea of going to pastor a video, primarily video communication church, but everything else being live, it was like, this is odd, but we love the concept. I wanted to come back home. I was, wanted to come back to where I grew up, south side of Atlanta, which was great for me to be able to come back to where I went to school and get to hopefully see a lot of my classmates come to faith. And so we laid out a plea, said, God, please just give us something so obvious. One morning, I'm going to church one Sunday morning, and this lady comes up to me and she says, "Hey, have you read the Atlanta Journal today?" And I said, "No, I haven't." This is back when you read the newspaper, but I typically did. I would get it delivered to my doorstep. She said, "There's this article in there about Charles Stanley's son who's doing these video churches." She goes, you ought to look into that." I was like, wow. So I went and got a, uh, you know, regular phone. I don't think it was a rotary, but a regular phone. I don't know if those cell phones back then. Called Jenny and I said, "You'll never believe what just happened." So that was our fleece that God answered our prayer with
Yeah.
this obvious somebody that's came along to make it clear for us. So yeah, we came on and launched as a part of North Point Community Church. Had just launched Buckhead Church. They were looking at doing other churches, but they truly didn't want to be multi-site or even get into the church planning business. But a few people came to them, a couple of them being Troy Fountain from Wiregrass
Yeah.
area, Dothan, Alabama, Sean C., Athens, Georgia, said, "Hey, we want to take this on the road, do the same thing." And so we were the third, which is now it's called the Irresistible Church Network. We were the third North Point partner, Irresistible Church Network church to be started in 2005. And so we launched out as a non-denominational church to really our mission back then wasn't much different than now, but it was to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ, to lean more attractional than more insider, more discipleship oriented, even though we know we need to do both. But it's just, if we're going to lean one way, we want to, Acts 15:19 is the verse we always share about that. We want to make it, we don't want to make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. So we really created spaces. And I'll tell you, Jared, back then, build it and they will come. And it happened.
Right.
Service out of the gate, between 400 and 500 people.
Yeah.
And for
Jeez.
15 years, up and to the right, growth of 12 to 15%, no looking back. I mean, we were baristas, people were lined up at the door. And then something happened in 2020 that changed that. So we can talk more about that, but no, it's been really, really cool for me. We've definitely gotten hopefully some better processes and some systems in place to better disciple people. But yeah, we have 4 locations. Online's kind of a 5th location, if you will. There's about 1,000 people that engage with us online each week as well. But yeah, I'm the senior pastor. We've got lead pastors at each location. We have about 50 to 55 staff that are either central staff for Southside Ministries, or they're local at one of our 4 locations.
How many people on a Sunday come to one of your 4 campuses?
Yeah, so all in, we're probably around 4,000, between 3,500 and 4,000. And then actively involved with us is around 8,000. I think this last year was like 8,500, something like that. And I say actively because, and this again can be a whole nother topic, but church attendance trends for us have
Right.
really changed. And people attend on average in our community, even in the South, about 1.2 times, according to which research you look at. We're actually about to do some mosaics with Keenum Analytics to get more better analytics on that. But yeah, people travel sports. I used to say was our biggest competition, but really we lose every time.
Yeah.
It is a thing, and people, they feel like they're kid if they don't travel doing sports, they're not gonna make pros, which fair enough.
Right.
Then online, I mean, ever since the pandemic, online has changed things.
Yeah.
So we have, and of course, culture's changed. I mean, there's a lot of things with culture has changed. So yeah, that's that's about the amount of people that we have engaged with us.
So when you said that you were going more attractional and more leading towards outsiders versus insiders, what's the, um, why do that? I mean, I know you got Acts, the verse in Acts, but what's the real motivation behind that?
Yeah. Well, I think you can't get away from the Great Commission. I mean, which is for us to make disciples and baptize and help them go into all the nations. I mean, you can't just say, well, we're just about reaching and leading people to Christ. And doing both, even in our preaching, it's a double barrel approach, is what Andy came up with, and trying to hit both people in the room. But we just really felt led that there's a ton of churches that in our communities that are doing a great job of, and I grew up in them, building community for insiders and using insider language, doing things that insiders understand and get. Um, the rungs on the ladder are very high when you come into these churches, that to be one of us, to be one of them, you need to know a certain amount of things. And so growing up in them, I didn't know what to do with someone who either one wasn't a Christian, or would say they weren't a Christian, but number two, that they weren't further along in their faith to know Bible books and things like that. So we do want to create spaces because we felt like that was a need. Is really, if you think about Young Life, FCA, other, we're a parachurch church. So we felt like there was a need for a parachurch church that was reaching, was meeting needs. But I will also say that I do believe Scripture is very adamant. I think Jesus is very adamant about us creating experiences. Jesus did it. I mean, created experiences for people to ask questions that they could ask and feel comfortable asking questions without being berated, or without giving examples, or not examples, but with uh, answers, but with questions.
Right.
You know,
Right.
interesting. Our staff's reading a book by Randy Newman right now called "Questioning Evangelism," and it's not about questioning evangelism. It's about using questions in how you evangelize.
Yeah.
So I think it was creating environments, and we realized that we couldn't force anyone into a relationship with Jesus, but what we could do is create experiences and environments for all different age groups. That the Bible is chicken, steak, seafood, but needs to be prepared differently for different age groups. So we do
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
We're sitting in a room right now for preschool, and our preschool, they don't need to be sitting in service. I mean, in our opinion, our elementary, our middle school, high school students, what we do for adults is what we do for adults. What we do for those children and students needs to be different to anyone that they invite. And then I'll say another thing too is that we want to partner with people in evangelism. We call it invest and invite. Invest in relationships and invite people not only to church but to Jesus. That take equipping, it does take discipleship in order for people to do that. But as a church, in our services and in all the things that we do, we just want to pay attention to our language. We want it to be able to be, again, that approach is probably a different way to say it than double barrel, but pay attention to who's in the room. And if we are asking people to trust us, that if you'll invite, we will create experiences for the Holy Spirit to work in someone's life. Because like I said, we can't force anyone. All we can do is create the experience for the Holy Spirit to work in someone's
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Now, over the years, we've assumed that people were coming in healthy, I think. And we talk about things like giving, serving. I mean, we just right out of the gate talk about stuff, and people weren't ready for that. People were coming in hurting. They're going through relational addictions, all the different things that they're going through, and they just want someone to listen. They want someone to pray with them. They want to be taught something that is helpful to them, no matter where they are in their journey. They might not listen, or even, I'm sorry, pay attention to all the lyrics on the screens of what we're singing. Even the things that we talk about in our different moments in the service, uh, even though we have started doing communion once a month, we do one of the sacraments. We do baptism. We explain baptism. We do immersion. but in communion, as we started doing that once a month, we've been explaining it, and the reason why we haven't done it for all these years is because we did want to be easier on the outsider coming in. But we've even, started shifting a little more, and I can talk more about that. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, we just felt like there was a need for not another church, but a different kind of church.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like um, one of the criticisms that you all have levied against you often is um, you not necessarily Southside, but just you all's in kind of non-denom megachurch world, which I grew up in. I
Yep,
grew up at North Point,
yep.
um, and I do think it's true of some churches, of course, but I always felt like it was painting with too broad of a brush of this idea of like y'all exist um, kind of like a corporation, everything is about numbers up and to the right, growth trends, you manipulate things to get growth. It's all about this, um, the righteous gemstones, kind of like it's about an ego. And I, my experience in it, it wasn't like that. I mean, it felt like, uh, of course, I mean, but also my experience in smaller churches has been like, yeah, we track growth and we're looking at numbers and we're looking at budgets and we're, it's like that doesn't go away. But it really felt like y'all really focused on stories of people and like what you celebrate. Was not, hey, we had this many people at Easter this year. Okay, cool. But it was really like individual stories of people coming to know Jesus. Uh, would you say that's something that you guys really focus on? And would you say that that's something that people maybe miss in their characterizations of y'all's world?
Absolutely, Jared. I think it is 100% spot on that people would assume about us that it's the Righteous Gemstones, amazing show, by the way. Don't
Right,
recommend
right,
it, but yeah, that
right,
that depiction of things is true, of many places, and I'll just tell you the tendency for a lot of pastors that get this celebrity status. I mean, think about it. A celebrity like in Hollywood, boy, it's I mean a celebrity professional athlete. It's hard to deal with that. I'm not giving excuses for it, but just they didn't sign up for it. Andy Stanley didn't sign up for it. Charles Stanley didn't sign up for it. Others, weren't all the way. So it just happens whether they're a gifted communicator or God's blessing. Billy Graham. I mean, but I will say that it is hard to not, uh, take the weird pill and, go off and start doing things and buying stuff and doing all this stuff and just getting your entourage and going with that and saying it's okay because I've earned this or sorry, but it's just grown so much to where I have to have these things. I mean, I get that. And I will say that the thing to be careful of is that, some of these things that are fair criticisms. Again, not all churches. I mean, I've met so many pastors of large churches that are very humble and don't represent that. And again, they didn't sign up for it to be. I remember hearing about Rob Bell back when his churches, was Mars Hill was large. That he found himself in a green room just tossing his keys, saying, "I mean, do I want to go out for this next service? This isn't really what I signed up for."
right.
These thousands of people, out there that I'm going to speak to. It just happened. So that can happen. Yes, we can be more corporate in terms of just looking at numbers and all that, but I agree with you. All churches should be looking at numbers because we do want to see growth, but yet at the same time, so much of the growth that megachurches have seen has been transfer growth. There's no way that many people are coming to Christ unless you're in another country.
Right.
It's just there's a lot of transfer growth. There's a lot of growth due to they've got cool student ministries and kid ministries, and I love the way that the pastor preaches, and their music's amazing. I mean, it's a passion conference every week. That's hard to compete with if you're a smaller church and you have a smaller budget, and if that's what people are looking for, the masses go there. But so yeah, that's a fair thing. But at the same time, I would say yeah, man. I mean, we were very humbled in the last 5 years with where we were, and the numbers I shared with you. I don't know. I mean, I probably inflated some of those. I'm just guessing, but the tendency
You would be the only pastor who's ever inflated his Sunday
we
numbers.
don't
I'll
even
tell you
have
that.
cemeteries, and I'm counting that. But it's a thing of that. the last 5 years have humbled, I think, everybody, but even the big, large churches, because all of a sudden, when you go from what you had to, and I'll tell you, to be honest, even when we have, I mean, last Easter, we had 7,500 or 8,000 people come. Christmas Eve, we'll have around that many, but I still look back at our 2018 and 19 numbers. It's just such a shame. But what the pandemic did is it kind of reset, and it said, okay, guys, what are you trusting in? And for the preachers who had to preach to a camera for online services versus a room full of people, I think was very humbling, for those. And you're trying to rebuild, you're trying to build back and get what you had before and all that. It is a tendency. So anyway, fair assessment, but yet not true of everyone. But I think it is a temptation that all larger churches have to fight against.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, there is a kind of cool and almost beautiful, like, um, evening out of, like, during the pandemic, whether you were preaching into like a $25,000 camera with a whole sound studio, or preaching into your computer, going up to your Facebook feed to for 12 people to watch. It's like all pastors were kind of in the same spot. It's like
Right.
we
Oh
all
yeah.
kind of got brought into, like, well, this is what we're doing now.
Yep.
And different
But you know
scales,
what
I guess.
the
And
numbers were? It was hard. The online numbers were kinda, really messy to try to figure out, and of course, those can be multiplied by 2 or 3 or 4, like, "We're sure
right.
that a whole family of 7 watching this?" But yeah, it did a number on a lot of folks, and so and you also, it's fair because you see so many people in the news that the rise and fall and how the mighty fall when they gain a whole lot, and then all of a sudden there's an affair or there's a money issue or something like that, and yeah, I get, and I will tell you that there are times that I don't wish to have, like, smaller church, and I'll tell you this, our campuses are different sizes. So we do have the small church experience. So that was including all of our campuses combined. So we've got
Right.
campuses that are thousands, and we've got campuses that are hundreds or less than a couple of hundred. We've got the different experience for each of our campuses, and it's great because it allows our staff and, for our staff to really see all of those things and how we have to really figure out our model and cater it to be able to accommodate those,
Yeah.
because not all the same. Like a North Point, for example, all their campuses are really large, except for maybe 1 or 2, and the other one's gonna be building the building. It'll catch back up with everybody, but it's to scale. It's bringing the
Yeah.
model to scale, which
Right.
which, is an interesting thing. Multi-site is a whole 'nother animal.
Right. Right.
It is. I wanted to do it for so long, and then once I got into it, I was like, "Boy, that is more complex than they said it would be." And then anytime people are thinking about it, I go, "I really would," because why are you wanting to do it? Are you outgrowing where you are? Is this to go start
Yeah.
church? Is it to expand? I mean, anyway, yeah, it's
No, it's one of the things I always respected about how North Point did multi-site, because it was less, the fear of multi-site would that it will be that it becomes kind of imperial and franchising of, like, well, it's just like you're taking your church, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna expand into new markets. But the way North Point did it was always more focused on how do we um, get into go into neighborhoods where people are already coming from. So they're expanding within Metro Atlanta and outside of Metro Atlanta,
right.
versus some churches where it's like, well, what we're doing is working in Atlanta, so let's start one in Miami. Let's start one in Charlotte. Let's start one in, and that one always felt like is like that feels a little more we're creating a brand. Of course, there's branding and all that involved in all of it, but theirs felt more, hey, we're trying to steward the growth that we're having,
Yeah. I
and
don't
keep
disagree
it
with those.
manageable for people.
Yeah, I don't disagree with those models, but I would definitely say they're more missional. But what I will say is that to me, when I talk to people about it and they say, "What would you say?" I'd say, "Well, number one is where you're outgrowing your space." That's what Northpoint did. It is outgrowing your space. So then we have to start these other ones and cannibalize some folks so that we can just focus on the community that we're in. And also, people do want to drive closer. They want a closer drive time. I mean, believe it or not, Christians have become more consumeristic.
I'm shocked.
Some of your listeners are gonna be like, "What? That's not good." But
Yeah.
there's that factor, but yeah, no, I think the different models and different ways that people approach it, good for them, and hope God blesses their efforts in doing that. Because I've seen, to your point, with going to those different cities, a church like Life Church, they've got a model and they've got like 50 sites and they crush it and they reach people that no one's reaching. I think, but I get it. Whenever you do go to these far off cities and you're like, we're gonna put this location in, if what you're doing isn't working where you are, what makes you think this is gonna work in Miami or Detroit or whatever?
Right.
A question to ask at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always thought it was funny when people criticize mega churches for growing, because I thought I don't like it's kind of a market driven thing. I mean, it's people. They're not. What I mean by that is like eh, people. It's like people criticizing Chick-fil-A, it's like people like it. You know, like what do they want you to do? Go out and just like shut it off? Like,
Well,
hey,
but I will say this,
we're
Jared,
banning any more people from coming.
to their defense, though. No, I get it. Yeah, right. Exactly. What are we going to say? Like we used to have neighbors around us that at our Peachtree City location that would say they have people coming from another county over to this church. I'm like, what are we going to do? Check tags? So I mean,
Right.
but I get that in fairness to some of the rocks that get thrown is that, well, they're only, reaching people who are consumeristic. They know how to draw a big crowd, and they give them, candy, and they give them soft serve kind of, stuff that's this not really the real truth. They kind of water it down and give the tickling ears what they want to hear, kind of thing. Which maybe is true to a degree, and could be the case with some trying to attract people who are far from God. But I do think that there is a way to grow that we got to be careful about. And again, we don't turn people away or whatever, but we've got to make sure. And this is what I'm excited about for us as we move forward. That as we have shrunk since COVID, our core has shrunk and we're able to do better with spiritual assessments and formations and really disciple people better to and know how to evangelize, know how to invite their friends to church, but also to Jesus. I mean, I read recently, in I think it was a Relevant magazine article, that Gen Z, is coming to Christ and coming to faith and getting buying Bibles like crazy, but they're not doing so in the institutional church
Mm,
for whatever reason. So I think
right.
that there is some, and maybe it's political stuff, or maybe it's because
Right.
of just fear of something big or whatever, or not fear, but just I don't want to go to something big. I want to go to something smaller. But for the smaller churches that do, would say that, no, totally understand it. To the churches that are like, I don't like the mega churches because they're so big or whatever. It's like, well, you need to be bigger. And I'm not saying you need to be thousands, but
Right.
you need to be seeing people grow in their faith and evangelize to reach people that will come in. People are also leaving your church because they move and because they whatever happens, they have a health issue or whatever. And we've got to replace those people that we lose
Right.
every year. So
Right.
we need to be growing. And just to say that we're it's just us three and no, us four, no more, we're gonna do. And man, you know what? We're not big, and we're proud about that because we disciple people so well. It's like, really?
Right. Right.
If you're making disciples who multiply, then you should be multiplying.
Right.
We do that through church planting. We give money to missions. We plant churches. That's great, but that's still not multiplying your folks that you have.
Right.
And that's the kind of churches I would say I grew up in a lot. We're just I knew everybody. We felt community, and we loved each other. We knew each other, the youth group, all the things. But I didn't realize that, and it was uncomfortable when someone new would show up, and for them to come into our fraternity, our
Right.
sorority, our party, it was like they had to work their way in, you know,
Right.
just like a new kid in school has to do, which is not good. Um,
Right.
and so that's the thing I would say. It's not about the size of your church. It's about, are we reaching new people? Are we reaching new unchurched and dechurched people? Remember, great dechurching of America, last 25 years, 40 million people have left the church. So a large number of dechurched people as well that need to
Right.
come on,
Right.
need to
Right.
reintegrate. So anyway, that's what I would say. I get where they're coming from, no doubt. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, I would challenge and say, what is your motive for being content with staying at the size that you've been for 10 years, if that, or 20 years, or
Right.
200, if that's the
Right.
case?
Right. Why did you guys decide um, to go non-denominational?
Yeah. I think it's going back to the idea of wanting to create churches that are different, in the community, that there's so many different denominational churches that have a presence in lots of communities.
And you
Not
did do that before it was as popular as it is now. I mean, it.
Right, yeah, exactly, exactly. So,
Yeah.
there's a part of it that back then too, when the ones that started, people are like, "Who are you? We don't know who you are." What I mean by that is that, are you Anglican? Are you Episcopal? Are you Baptist? Are you Presbyterian? Are you, Church of God? Are you Assemblies? Who are you? What are you? Who's asking that question?
Christians.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
Christians are asking that question. What we found is a couple things, like, with our strategy. Number one, people who are far from God, or returning to God, whatever, they weren't coming to our church going, "Well, what denomination are you?"
Right.
Nor were they saying, "That's weird to have a preacher on the screen."
Right.
There were so many things that we did that they were just like, "Man, you," and don't get what I'm not saying here. You make Jesus cool for our kids and for us to wanna follow him, and we're not making Jesus cool. I'm not saying that. I don't say that. It's blasphemous probably. But it's that we're creating experiences that make it different than what I grew up in, which was whatever. And I don't wanna say if it was boring or whatever, I don't know, but it just is different. It may not be
Right.
more exciting, it's just different. And people do like that, and their kids love it, and they seem to love it, and teenagers seem to love the model and the strategy around with our kid and student ministries, of having small group leaders that are older than them, that we vet to be layers of influence in their lives along with their parents. But we also create music that's relevant for them, teaching that's relevant for them, give them some food. I mean, just do some things that are going to be things that they enjoy, where they wake their parents up to come to church. So all that to say, with why non-denom is that, yeah, I think there's probably some of that for many of us that were involved in denominations, that, and I'll just say it, but I don't want to be careful, because my heart here is that the baggage that goes with those things, for whatever. But I mean, now people have non-denominational baggage, so fair enough.
That's right. Yeah.
Been around long enough to where there's baggage there. But I think we didn't want an association. We want association with Jesus.
Yeah.
Not that
Yeah.
having a denomination, you can't have an association with Jesus, but it's just kind of like, come on in. We're just this, you know, a community. And honestly, if we could, we would take the word church off the name. It would just be, as a matter of fact, the campus I'm sitting in right now is called the Southside Center. It's an event center, but it's also our church. And we named it that way. We're in the middle of a town here in Fayetteville, Georgia, that, like I said, the largest movie studios in the world or country is down the street. But we didn't call it church because we wanted it to be. And there's a splash pad and a playground out here. Families walk up here on Sunday morning, and they look in and, "What's going on?" And we say, "Come on in," and they come in.
Yeah.
So it was all that. It was just that enough baggage with things that if we could, without not messing with ecclesiology and all that, in the church, taking the name off of it, would be. But yet, that's confusing for people. Like, what are you? You a cult? Or you a you know,
Yeah.
what it's like, well, we're a church, but we're just this kind of church. We're not going to line up exactly. Now, I'll say this too, Jared, you and I have talked about this. St. Augustine's quote, which is one of my favorites, the in the core, in the essential things, we want to have unity. But and those are very few for us. Maybe they should be more. That's arguable. In the non-essentials, we want to have liberty, and in all things charity. That really is, in my mind, the essence of why and what we do, is
Right.
that we have those essential things. Now, I get that people will say that, well, Chris, the way we do baptism and the way we view, this doctrine and that doctrine, how can you say that's not essential? Maybe I'm getting it wrong, but we
Yeah.
we we that's why when we say what we believe, our doctrinal statement is pretty minimal. We say more what we teach, because what we believe as a church, we've got some people in here that, I mean, Reformed, Calvinist, Arminians, don't know what they are.
Right.
um,
Right. Right.
Some of them will love going to, when they go back home, an Anglican or Episcopal or a Catholic church, just because when I go back home, it's kinda like, "I just want that," I want the okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not gonna we want you to follow Jesus, and we want you to affiliate and identify with him, not that I'm this denominational Christian of some kind. I'm Methodist or I'm a da and that's what's kinda sad about all the denominations, in my opinion anyway, is that they call themselves and identify with that versus I'm a Christ follower, which that's could be a nuance of words, but you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, no, I think it's the brilliance of the non-denominational movement, um, has been and why kind of evangelicalism, that's a loaded word. I don't mean it in the political sense, but in the in the church sense, has been so has become kind of not overtaken in a bad way, but kind of it's become almost synonymous now, almost with the non-denominational church movement, because the non-denominational movement was about scaling down to because most non-denominational churches nowadays websites people treat websites differently, but back in the day, I mean, 5 or 10 years ago, if you looked at a non-denominational church website, it would have had this is what we teach, this is what we believe, and it's usually um scripture, sin, Trinity, salvation, and heaven. 5 or 6 things. And then, church, ordinances, communion, baptism. But what they did was they just scaled down these, like, what are the things that we feel like these are the kind of the core ideas that if you don't actually believe, and I don't even mean if you have some kind of different, some different views on inerrancy, but I mean in general, if you don't believe the scriptures are the word of God, if you don't believe in the Trinity, we really don't. Now you're welcome to, as a non-Christian, to be a part of our church, but those are the things that we're going to teach and hold to. But everything else we hold very loosely. And I remember what I remember experiencing when I was a non-denom was everyone was more united on well, maybe I can say it like this. The difference between being at a non-denom and being in the PCA, when I was in the PCA for a little bit, Episcopal Church is just different than all of that. But the PCA is very united on their beliefs, and it's a great, wonderful thing.
Yeah, Westminster Confession, yeah.
Yeah, but the non-denom world was more united on the mission and this kind of like, hey, look, if you're hiring people, you're not necessarily putting them through like a doctrinal, um, hey, what do you think of this, and this? Now, if they're teaching, I'm sure there's
Or
especially around those five or
that's
six
right.
things.
That's right.
We don't want to be schizophrenic as a church and be saying we're not
Yep,
going to have a battle in the
right.
pulpit about baptism, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
But it seems much more focused on, hey, do you want to come be a part of what we're doing in creating, you know, functionally just a simple Christian church? Just if you boiled Christianity down to kind of the non-negotiables, and then you built a church on top of that, that's kind of what you have in the non-denominational movement.
Yeah. No, I think that's really well said. What do you wanna be known for in the community as a church? What do you wanna be known for? Do you wanna be known that we're this name and we're this denomination, we're this, uh, whatever, That's a question that we all have to wrestle with, and I think that, when people think of our brand, in a crude way of saying it, our brand as a church, I want them to and I don't care what denomination you are, that's an important question to ask. But the other thing that I would say is, along with your point is, we have people who will come in, like I prayed with a guy the other day that wanted to receive Christ, he prays and trusts Jesus. We had lots of conversations where when he gets done praying, he goes, "Oh, Chris, by the way, uh, is it okay if I don't believe everything in the Old Testament?"
Right, right.
And I'm like,
And you said, I take back the
"I
whole
take back
prayer.
everything." So that would wig some people out, right? Is
Right.
that and even like where the ministry I grew up in with Lordship Salvation, it was just like you committed, you need to know all these things. It's like, you're cleaning up before you get in the shower kind of deal. That would really
Mm,
weird people out, and I get that it and we believe that all scripture is inspired, of course. Like, no, not of course, but, but we're gonna leave some room for people who are still figuring things out and that we're going to be okay with them not being okay, but we're not going to be okay with them staying that way. And we're gonna approach. It really is. It's figuring out how much that we're going to allow. And again, these words might come out different or weird to some, or strange. What is theology? How does theology shape our ministry strategy, or how much does approach to how we want scripture to impact lives in our community and our culture going to dictate our strategy? So I really believe that it can be both, but many times if we take the theological points about what we believe about someone who follows Jesus and what is sin, that we're going to say, okay, you just got to tell the truth, no question. But how can we build bridges to share that truth? How can we build bridges for both sides of not just politics, but both sides of beliefs to walk across to meet each other? And again, what are those core beliefs that we really want to be a part of who we are and what we're asking people to be a part of in our church?
Yeah.
Um, we just, for good or bad, we lower that bar. We don't have membership. Our membership really has changed to engagement. We want people to serve. We want people to invite. We want people to get in a group. We want people to give. We want people to follow Jesus, read their Bible, pray, all those things, to engage and fully follow Jesus and be changed by the gospel and by the power of Jesus. So those are some things that are distinctives about what we're pursuing. Um, as a church. And like I told you, I think before we even got on the call, I don't really think about denominations a lot or even talk about denominations a lot. And we haven't really had a lot of conversations with people that I can remember recently of them, again, even still asking us, what denomination are you?
Right. Right.
We just kind of go, oh, they don't have anything on there. They must be just a church that is without a thing.
Yeah.
But, but I will say one of the things that's powerful about being in denomination outside of those who get pension is for the is for the network and the community with other leaders. Thankfully, we have North Point has created what's now called the Irresistible Church Network, that we have community with other like-minded churches. We don't all do the same things, but what we all have in common is we share a DNA that we want to be outward facing, and that we want to make it remove some of those obstacles and barriers that we have maybe over the years in churches. Again, take away the lower rungs of the ladder for people to come in and to believe something differently completely than we believe. And do they feel like they can connect here? Because I think that people are coming to churches now, many of them because they're desperate and they have no other choice. They've looked for other ways to find help. They're in crisis, but also they're coming to connect. And then I do think that there's a sense of truth that they're looking for. So how do we remove obstacles and barriers, not make it easier for them to follow Jesus, not paint a picture that, hey, just this soft gospel that's just pray this prayer and then you're fine. You're gonna have eternal life, forgiveness of sins. No, not that. We're gonna teach lordship as well. But I believe that removing obstacles that I think that we put in the that a lot of churches have put in the way too soon for people, that they just say, I give up. It's like going to one of those gyms, CrossFit or whatever, that wants you to do this extensive, intense workout on day one
Right. Right. You'll hurt
without
yourself.
without. I've had a trainer say to me, I haven't had a trainer before, but I've just had them telling me, you know what I tell somebody? If you're fighting to go to the gym, just show up to the gym and walk in and touch the weights. And then
Right.
you can, but at least take that step to
Right.
go in and just touch the weights and say, I went to the gym.
Right. Right.
That's what we're wanting to do, is to create a place that people can feel like they can do that, and they can invite their friends to a place that is not going to be judgmental. And again, not that not denominations are or smaller churches are. It's just that some can be.
No, but
And
it sounds like I mean, one of the themes that I've been kind of seeing pop up in this podcast over the last few weeks, even, is just this idea of churches having patience with people, um, creating not rushing discipleship to where it's like you show up and it's like, hey, if you're going to be, you're welcome. Because every church would say anyone can be a part. Every church would say sinners are welcome here, but it doesn't get communicated to people really because of this timeline. And what the churches who are saying that are saying is, yes, you are welcome to come here and we want more for you. I think every church would say that too. The difference between being a kind of a grace infused church and not is your timeline of like, we want you to turn your life around now. And we expect it to happen within the inquirer's class, you know. And if you want to join the church and you're still um living with your girlfriend, or you're still whatever, but you're walking this path towards, like,
Yeah,
you're now, maybe you're talking about marriage now and you weren't even talking about marriage before. um Too bad. You need to get all the way there before we ever let you in. And I think that the the other way of doing it, which is what you guys, and I mean, I would probably get accused of this too, is like, well, you just don't have the standards. Like, no, it's not that we don't have the standards. It's a goal. It's like a bench press goal. Our goal is to get you to this place, but we also recognize, like, we've got your whole life to do that.
that's right.
I
Yep.
mean, the difference between pastoring someone and saying, "I've got 18 months," and I think that's because church has borrowed a lot from modern education curriculum, thinking through, like, it's about teaching core things at certain age groups, which yes, there is you have to do that because people are certain ages, and like you're saying, you prepare things differently. Um, but then when you take that as an adult and you think, well, it's our job once you become a Christian to disciple you within the next 18 months to 2 years. Um, and if we don't see a lot of growth, then we're going to start putting pressure on you to, like, hey, instead of saying, hey, welcome, we love you, we're glad you're here, you have the next 20 to 40 years to figure this out. You know, we're going to teach you, but we don't expect it to, it's farming. It's
Yeah,
like, we're
that's right.
putting down seeds and
That's
we're going to sit back and wait for the Spirit to really do its work in your life.
and to your point of being welcoming, everything speaks when you're being welcoming. And what I mean by that is that from, reason why we put parking attendants out there for to greet is not because they need to find spaces. It used to be. But is that the sermon starts in the parking lot. We want them to be
Mm,
greeted in the parking lot. We'll send out the Wamba wagons, which is our preschool wagons to go pick up the kids. Guest services are there to greet. Everything's clean. Everything smells good. Everything, like, not because, again, put on a show. And I know that everybody has a budget and you have to work, but how can you make your experience, no matter what your denomination is, that everything speaks, that it's welcoming, that
yeah,
that we pay attention that you're coming, not just the person that's been coming here for 50 years, the person that hasn't come here yet. When you invite them, they come in, it's like, does it smell? Does it look old? Does it look whatever? Now I do understand that people would appreciate that they want this liturgical or they want this kind of music or whatever. People have their preferences, and you know what? Thankfully, there are different preferences out there of churches, like my parents' Baptist church, and an Anglican Episcopal, a non-denom, contemporary, whatever, organ. All the different preferences are out there for people to get, but we still need to create welcoming in, and it's just become so difficult, especially in these last few years, because of how divisive our country has become. That in churches got put into the camp that that's the last place I want to show up to. I'll maybe have coffee with you, but that's the last place I want to show up to because I'm going to get judged. They're going to
right,
be this, that. They're going to believe
right,
this, the other that falls into this camp politically.
right.
We've got a lot of work still to do, and I'm loving this book that we're reading about evangelism that just talks about asking or answering questions with questions that people have versus just giving them statements. And to your point, we're just planting seeds, and it's a slow growth, and it's a slow process. But that's all of us in our faith journey,
Sure,
of
sure.
going through from explorer to thriver. But in between, there's lots of deserts.
Right,
No,
right.
we got room for all those people and accommodations. Now, I will tell you, we also set the bar high when people want to volunteer in certain areas. We have them do a background check. They have to
Sure,
sign
yeah,
off on an agreement to a certain lifestyle. So we're not just willy-nilly, hey, come on in, and then you can start teaching a class or teaching a group or whatever with kids. No, we've got some things in place. And so to say that it's just like we're we've got the bar so low, that's not true in all places, and that's where we have to have a conversation with people, and we hate it. I mean, we talk to them and they go, I'm not going to pass the background check. It's like, that's okay. We've got these other places that you can serve, and we want you to still be engaged and all that. sometimes they understand, sometimes they don't, but,
Right.
yeah, it's still there too, but yeah,
Yeah, no, you definitely have to continue to create a safe environment, and and you don't wanna put I mean, you don't wanna put people in a position where they'd have to teach something that they don't are outright not practicing, right?
exactly, right. Yep.
Well, I love what you're saying because I think there's a connection. Not necessarily, it's not one to one, but it's analogous to what you're talking about is you've created a church that is intentionally lowering barriers of entry to kind of appeal to um, something that anyone in the community can be a part of. Um, and that the goal is to take them and kind of form them and disciple them. And that to me is actually the essence of what Anglicanism was always meant to be. Like,
I
we
love that.
have the Book of Common Prayer. It genuinely was meant to be a common way that Christians could gather together and pray in English, like as in, nowadays the old English is like, oh, that's archaic and we don't understand it. But then it was still it was definitely public speech. It was more
Right.
elevated
Yeah,
speech, but still intelligible. And
yeah,
it's remains intelligible. But
yep.
the but the heart of it was that Christians could gather, pray in their own tongue in a way that they can understand, that the theological barriers of entry would be lowered as much as we could. J.I. Packer said that it was meant to be a evangelical comprehensiveness,
Mm,
a as in, like, if you were evangelical, you could be a part. If you believed in the gospel, you could be a part of the Anglican Church. Now, whether we disagreed on communion or
that's right.
liturgy
Yep,
or all these
exactly.
things, we might disagree on those things, but these were neighborhood churches where people could gather. And um, and this is still true in the Church of England today, is like the Church of England is the churches that are growing aren't really leaning into their like Anglican identity as much as we might think. That I mean, Holy Trinity Brompton, there's not a prayer book, you know, being done. There's still a lot of Anglican, and that's because Church of England's different. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. But um, the the purpose was the people that are coming. I think in my church, the people that are starting to show up in my church are not, most of the time, are not looking for an Episcopal church. Um, they're looking for a good local church that they trust, that's safe, and to your point, they're hurting and they need care. Um, and so I think as pastors, whether you're non-denom or whether you're Anglican, having that mindset of it's our job to kind of look outward at who God is bringing, and to create spaces where they can feel like they can belong before they believe, and they can grow to into those things. That I think we as Anglicans have a lot to learn from the non-denom world, because that's what they're doing, and that's what they've been really successful at doing. And we don't have to become. I'm not saying we have to become non-denom, but that's something that you guys are doing that I think the rest of us could really learn from.
Well, and at the same time, though, I have come to appreciate over the last few years the Book of Common Prayer and other liturgies just to give me language to pray when I don't know what to pray. And
Yeah,
I'm thankful to
yeah,
have come across some of these things that have helped me in my own solitude and silence as a extrovert that is maybe not as contemplative as others, and that's why I've talked so much on this podcast. But is that I need to be more still and quiet and thoughtful. So, and I'll tell you who's done a really good job with this with the Catholic Church, and I don't know how the Pope feels about it. Is Father Mike in his podcast? I mean, I think that's what it is, right? Yeah, Father Mike's.
I don't know.
Okay, well, yeah, you look him up. I don't wanna say made Catholic relevant, even again, but it's just more comprehensible, and it's
Yeah,
because he's out and he's got a large platform, podcast, on Instagram, all the things. He's like one of those things that I think he might be the number 1 podcast, actually. Either
jeez,
that or the
or
Doc
us.
Recap or yeah,
It's either him or us. Yeah.
yeah, it is. I'll do the research on this, and so I think after today's episode, we're definitely gonna move up a spot or 2. But, yeah, no. So no, we've
If
got a
you
lot
send it
going.
to your parents, we might. Yeah.
That's true. That we will. We'll keep climbing. I will. You can count on it. My
Yeah.
mom's gonna be so excited that I'm on a podcast. But yeah, I think that there's so much to learn from each other because just like we're trying to slow down and we're trying to do a little bit more because what people are coming into, even though that we do want to remove barriers, for us to add things like communion, times of prayer, some even prayers that are liturgical prayers for us to pray, things like that are ways that. And I'm not going off of people, the next generation just wants acoustic music and they want to have more Anglican style, whatever. Yes, there's a percentage of people who don't. They'll do. That's their preference.
Right. Right.
And I think really what they're looking for is they're in such a noisy world, they wanna come into a little bit more quiet and a little bit more reflective and not a loud band. I mean, some people still prefer that, but maybe not a loud band and somebody running around on stage. I don't
Right.
so
Yeah.
anyway, I'm so glad that there are all the different churches that are out there to reach people, that have different preferences. It's just that I would wish that all of our churches, and we've got a better job to do at it too, is to make sure that we're thinking about who could be in the room, um, not just followers of Jesus, but those who have
Yeah.
been de-churched and unchurched or non-Christians. And if they're not there, why aren't they there? And how can we preach and teach and disciple as such that our tenders are going to be equipped and
Yeah.
passionate about inviting and feel good about inviting.
Yeah. And
And so
those are the ones that
this last thing,
Jesus.
sorry, is that
Oh,
is
yeah.
that uh, I'm not saying this in a boastful way, but it's just interesting, and you do with it what you want. Over the last 20 years, other people who attend other churches in our area, they've told me this, and again, not a prideful way, but whenever they run up against someone who's a de-churched or an unchurched person, they said, "You need to go to Southside," but
Yeah.
they don't invite them to their own church. And so
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah. Why is that? Yeah.
why is that, and not because we're doing all this that we're doing the best thing there is. It's like it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and those are the ones that Jesus actually came for. I mean, he came for all of us because we're all that. Having that mindset of like, yeah, he leaves the 99 and goes after the one. He rejoices to find the lost coin. It is Japan, that there's others who are not part of his fold yet that he's calling. And so I think churches focusing on evangelism, focusing on reaching those outside of its walls, um, will always be in a good spot. Uh, Always be growing. So, Chris, thanks so much for coming on. Where can we find Southside online?
Yeah. Southside.org. That's it. Southside.org and Instagram, Facebook, all the things. And yeah, we're just trying to figure things out like all of us are in these times. I mean, I'd love to have another discussion either offline or online with you about just how to reach people in this Babylon that we find ourselves. But yeah,
Yeah.
Southside.org. And yeah, would love to help any way we can and also love to learn from as many of you that we can as well.
Well, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.